Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 9-game Major League Baseball slate. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? That really does help the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it. I'm feeling somewhat better. Still feel a little bit stuffed up, but uh, feeling some better today. So yesterday we did pretty good. Atlanta ended up going crazy, which was not surprising, and we had some good hitters, lots of home runs yesterday too for our smaller slate. So hopefully today we can continue to do well and have a nice slate here. Let's go ahead and get into our pitchers though. Uh, so let's go ahead and look at those. So we do have a pretty deep pitching slate from this perspective. From that perspective, we have the top five guys in Flaherty, Cease, Gilbert, Swirlenbach, and Webb. They all look pretty solid today. They all have about the expectation of six strikeouts for the best on the slate. Most of the other pitchers available are below that. And they all have that GPP slash extreme GPP kind of situation. Now, my favorite play right now is probably Gilbert, followed by Schwellenbacher, followed by Webb, and then Cease, and then Flaherty. But honestly, all of them have some nice upside. The question here is price, and so Gilbert's the best value. Flaherty is a little bit overpriced, especially because he doesn't have the highest of ceilings. But both Case, Swellenbach, and Webb all have some nice utility here today. However, Webb does have one of the worst, weakest, or most difficult matchups. All five of them will be pretty high owned today, though. So I think Case is probably the one that gets the least ownership of the top five here, along with Webb, probably because he's facing Milwaukee as well. But I think that Gilbert definitely jumps off the page as the nicest option against Tampa Bay, who's had some struggles lately. But he does look really solid today. He's got a pretty good ceiling. Even though he's had a couple of rough games at times, he definitely gets enough strikeouts that he can pay off here, and so he's definitely worth a look. He has also, um, Tampa Bay is the uh, is projected the worst on this entire slate, so and they're one of the few teams I really didn't see much that I liked from them today. As for the other four, so Flaherty, he's a little bit overpriced here. He's got a tough match with Baltimore, but I do think he's definitely capable of a good game, though I do like Gunnar Henderson's potential today. Cease looks okay for the Padres. He does have a favorable matchup with St. Louis. His ceiling has not been super high lately, though, so do keep that in mind. But he's definitely capable of a good game here. Swellenbach for Atlanta is somebody that I really do like. He's been surprisingly good lately, even though he's giving up a couple earned runs in most games. He's still managing enough strikeouts to pay off here. Now, he doesn't project that well on the strikeouts today, but I do think that he definitely has that capability, so he's definitely worth a look. Logan Webb also looks solid today, though he has a difficult matchup against Milwaukee at times. This season, Milwaukee's been good at times. I do think that he definitely has a good ceiling, though, and he can definitely pour in some strikeouts at times. Though he's been a little bit weaker than some of the other options that I've already mentioned at this position for that. But he's definitely interesting. Now, I'm going to mention that Paft may not be pitching for Arizona. It seems like there's some discrepancy on who might pitch there. But I do think that whoever pitches against the Mets today does carry some risk. And then if we go from below that, Crochet is a guy that's not going to pitch very deep in the game. So do keep that in mind. And then we have another group of five in Myers, Manea, Springs, Woods, Richardson, and Heaney. All five of these guys are for kind of boomer bust plays. Now Heaney and Springs are going to have some high ownership today, so do keep that in mind because they do have pretty good matchups and situational statistics. So they are good P2 options, but they are purely boomer bust plays. I don't really love rostering any of these guys, but they all have some potential. Manea's been surprisingly good lately, so he's definitely interesting. But as far as that group of five, I think Keeney, then Springs, and Manea are probably the top three there. And then if we go below that, there's really just a bunch of guys that are not in great situations and have pretty rough matchups. Miles Mikolas is probably the only guy that has any potential at all today at that bottom level. So, with that said, let's look at the catchers today. Excuse me. Okay, so if we look at our catchers today, we do have a pretty interesting slate from that perspective. I meant to actually look at the weather real quick, so let me pull that up because I forgot. For the weather on this slate, the San Diego Padres St. Louis game is the game with the most risk. There's a little light risk in the Atlanta Minnesota game, but that's really the only thing. I don't think any of these games will have any too many issues today, but there could be some weather concerns in St. Louis. Do keep that in mind. All right, sorry about that. So let's go look at our catchers here. So Will Smith for the Dodgers does have the best metrics on here. He's going to be pretty high owned today as well. He is fairly expensive for his potential though, so do keep that in mind. But he's definitely capable of a good game here as his hitting metrics are off the charts. But I do think there's some good value that you can use here, so you don't have to pay up for him. Um, but uh, excuse me, one of those guys that you could use is Connor Wong. Now he was kind of a disappointment yesterday, as he went 0 for 3, but I do think he's capable of a good game here, and he's definitely got good metrics again. Hopefully, he can do better than he did yesterday. And then Alejandro Kirk. Kirk is going to be the highest owned probably at this position at just at $3,300. He's going to have some nice potential today. He's been pretty good in the last week, averaging 7.5 fantasy points a game. And at this price point, we can definitely take that. Now, he didn't do anything yesterday, but he's definitely capable of a solid game today. So he's definitely somebody I'm going to try to roster, especially because it's some of the positions a little bit harder to find good value at. As for the ownership here, Alejandro Kirk, Will Smith, and Drew Romo will be uh, uh, that's Colorado's catcher, by the way, Romo. Because some of the other positions, you're going to have to feel more about paying up at those positions, and one of those is actually first base. Not a lot of great value at this position today. Vlade Jr. definitely jumps off the page as the top overall play at this position. He's got really good hitting metrics today. He's been absolutely phenomenal lately, too. Even without home runs, he's scoring double-digit fantasy points. And, of course, with this price point, we definitely need that. Another guy, though, that's hitting very well all of a sudden is Matt Olson. He's had some really good games lately. He scored 34 fantasy points yesterday as well. Had a monster game for the Braves. And I look for him to continue to get heated up because the Braves are trying to get back into the playoff race here. I think they're right in the thick of the wild card race now. So the Braves are trying to get going here, and it definitely looks like that he's spurning that. Jake Berger also in play for Miami. Obviously, Miami is a little bit risky here, but he did manage 7 fantasy points. But with his price point, we do need more than that. They This is kind of a high risk, high reward situation because these games in Colorado. So definitely somebody to look at, but I do think Olsen and Vlade Jr. are a little bit safer than him. As for the ownership here, though, Tristan Casas, Jake Berger, and Vlade Jr., with Matt Olson being one of the contrarian plays at this position. And it's definitely a position where I feel like you have to kind of pay up a little. You could also look at Otani, who's $7,000, which is just insane. But he's been insane, so, I mean, what do you expect? So looking at second base, this position is pretty weak. I do like Marcus Semien for Texas. He's got some really good hitting metrics today. Not a whole lot of home run upside, but he's definitely capable of that at times. Otto Lopez is an interesting play as he's got really good hitting metrics. Actually, one of the better hitting metrics for the entire slate today. He did manage a hit yesterday and he got walked. Hopefully, he can score a little bit more than 5 fantasy points though today. But he's priced pretty fairly, so he's definitely worth a look. Though he doesn't have a lot of home run upside at all. Another guy, though, I do like here a lot is Connor Norby. Norby has played just a handful of games so far, but he's really been doing well for the Marlins since he joined, so he's definitely worth a look here. He's had some really solid games, and he's had some home runs as well, so he's definitely capable. As for the ownership here, Connor Norby, Marcus Semien, Whit Merrifield, Brendan Rodgers. You could also look at Will Wagner and Brooks Baldwin as their dirt cheap options here. Looking at third base, Rafael Devers jumps off the page as somebody that I really thought about making a core play. I don't typically like making expensive guys core plays, but his metrics are just off the charts today. So he is going to be hard to roster at that price point. And while this position is not nearly as bad as first base when it comes to finding value, it's definitely still pretty high, and so paying up here is definitely a strategy. Connor Norby, though, can't fit in here. as well as a couple others like Vlade Jr. and Jake Berger that we already mentioned. Now, another guy that we do like here, though, is Ryan McMahon for uh, Colorado, as he does have good hitting metrics today. But like I told, one guy that you could look at as a low-owned upside guy would be Miguel Vargas for the White Sox. Even though he has struggled since joining the White Sox, he's definitely capable of a decent game based on the metrics today. The ownership at this position: Connor Nordby, Jake Berger, Rafael Devers, Ryan McMahon, and Vlade Jr. Looking at shortstop, uh, this is a position where there's some nice value as well as some good expensive guys. Though I don't really love the expensive guys today. That'd be Gunnar Henderson, Francisco Lindor, and Ezekiel Tovar. All three of them have okay metrics today, but nobody really jumped off the page here. Now, one guy I really do like is Miguel Rojas for the Dodgers. He does have some really nice hitting metrics today. Now, he doesn't have that super like home run upside, even though he did hit a home run in his last game. He's definitely capable of a solid game, though, and he has had some good hitting games lately, so he's definitely worth a look here. Now, Brooks Baldwin and Mason McCoy, both under $3,000, can fit in at this position as well. The ownership here, though, will be Corey Seager, Tommy Edman, and Ezekiel Tovar, but I do think it's a good position to pay down at. Looking in the outfield, Luis Robert is a core play for me now. You might say, why would you make a White Sox a core play, especially one that's a very high risk, high reward? Well, he's been hitting the ball pretty well lately. He's cheap enough that he can help you pay up into the positions. And even if he doesn't score a ton of fantasy points, he probably won't burn you because he should still score a few. And he's not got the worst matchup ever. He's got really good home run metrics today as well, so he's definitely worth a look. I don't when these core plays are very loose today because I mean two of them are fairly expensive and Robert is kind of contrarian typically. But Jarren Duran has been phenomenal lately. He's hit 4 home runs the last 10 days. He's just seeing the ball very well right now. He's also had some really dominant games against Toronto this season. And so as long as he's hitting the ball well, he's going to be somebody I'm going to try to roster, though he is very expensive and hard to roster as a result of that. Mookie Betts and Toscar Hernandez also fit in very well here. Some other guys I do like, though, Nolan Jones for Colorado. Let's see. If you do go with some Colorado players, he's definitely one of the better options. Even though he hasn't hit a lot of home runs this season, he's definitely got some decent hitting metrics today. Ohtani is super expensive at $7,000, but he's definitely a capable option with the home runs he's been hitting lately and stolen bases. Willie Abreu is a nice value play as well. I do think he draws some really good metrics today. He has been somewhat inconsistent the last few games, but I do think he's got some upside in this one. Dalton Varsho also looking very interesting on the slate for Toronto. I think this Boston-Toronto game is probably going to be pretty having a lot of scoring potential, so I do like a lot of players from that game. Looking at contrarian plays here, George Springer, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Charlie Blackmon, Jake Cave, Griffin Conine from Miami, who's $2,000, and Grant McCray from San Francisco, who is $2,600. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments,